There was a school shooting this week at a Catholic school in Minneapolis. There is easy common ground in recognizing this as a tragedy, but where to place the blame is politically divisive, and the media is fueling it. While most coverage has been centered on the crime itself and the victims, the narrative splits when it comes to explaining what caused it. Before we even knew all the facts to the story, you could predict how each outlet would frame it. Welcome back to Bias Breakdown.
And it is far too easy to buy a gun. It's the guns, everyone. It's not really a secret.
So a suicidal transgender who hates Trump's Christians and Jews shoots up kids at a Catholic school, and the media wants to take away your handgun.
Rather than giving you balanced viewpoints or straightforward facts, you got typical media spin. If you only consumed left-leaning news after the shooting, you'd likely hear that guns are the root of the problem.
The United States not only has the highest rate of gun violence of any country in the world, it's become a leading cause of death for young people and teenagers in this country. That should make everybody angry. Weaponizing the shooter's identity is meant to distract from what matters.
People who have known mental illness are still able to very easily, it looks like, according to the police chief in Minneapolis, recently could just go in and get 3 guns and then use those guns to murder children in a school.
But flip the channel to right-leaning media, and you're largely told a mental health crisis created this tragedy.
Just a few years ago, the psychiatric community classified transgenderism as a mental illness. When someone has an illness, we should treat it instead of affirm it.
No one wants to call this out for what it actually is, a mental illness that the left have spent years brainwashing society into thinking is normal.
This is what we call media framing, a type of media bias. It's not that the facts are wrong, but the story is told or framed in a way that pushes one angle over another. Here, left-leaning media largely framed the school shooting around gun violence, calling for more laws, and right-leaning media focused on mental health, calling for intervention. This story is also an example of bias through flawed logic. When journalists oversimplify a complex issue or narrow the scope, they push you toward a one-sided takeaway. So in this example, if a news outlet says a school shooting happened primarily because of lax gun laws or only because of a lack of mental health awareness, both are drawing connections and conclusions that are narrow. Presenting a single factor as the guaranteed cause is flawed logic. Oftentimes when we see flawed logic, it's paired with a news outlet leaving out or burying certain facts of a story that may support a different conclusion, which is another form of bias we saw here. The school shooting happened on a Wednesday morning, and by the time Wednesday evening rolled around, it was known the shooter was transgender, born a male but who identified as female and changed their name to reflect that according to court documents. This is a fact to the story, but one some left-leaning networks buried in their evening coverage the day of the shooting. In ABC's nightly coverage of the shooting, the name change of the shooter was mentioned more than 9 minutes into the broadcast.
We're also learning that Robin Westman was born a male with the name Robert, but in 2020 identified as a female, and a Minnesota court approved his name change to Robin.
It was similar for NBC.
According to court documents obtained by NBC News, the shooter was granted a legal name change to Robin in 2020. The documents saying Westman identifies as a female and wants her name to reflect that identification.
And CBS devoted 6 seconds to the shooter's name change 9 minutes in.
Several years ago, Westman sought a legal change of name from Robert Westman to Robin Westman.
None of these networks used the word transgender in their coverage. It was also known in the early hours after the shooting, the shooter had recently and legally purchased a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol, and bragged about how easy it was to get the guns in manifesto writings. But in Fox News' primetime lineup, they don't mention this fact at all. How the gunman obtained the firearms wasn't talked about on any of the primetime shows the evening of the shooting. These are examples of bias by omission. It happens when information is either left out completely or buried in the story. Some of you may think the shooter being trans is irrelevant, or that how the shooter got the guns doesn't matter, and that's okay. You're supposed to form your own conclusions. But when the media shields parts of a story, that's not right. Whether a journalist thinks the info is relevant or not, both pieces of information matter to one political viewpoint or another. Omitting or glossing over these facts, that's bias. This is an emotionally charged issue, and the network coverage, it was just as emotional. Piecing together clips from both left and right outlets, it sounds like heated arguments and fights playing out in the media.
The thoughts and prayers, I'm so beyond that nonsense.
And yet again, like clockwork, half of the politicians in our country have little more to offer than thoughts and prayers. That is all they are offering.
I think people want more than prayers at this point. They're really angry.
I'll go to bed tonight and thank God on my knees that don't exist anymore, that my child is still alive, and any Democrat politician that says I'm wrong for that anyone's wrong for praying, God help you.
You're going to start seeing narratives. You're already seeing them. They're already out there about how the shooter was trans.
Is there any doubt that this person wasn't in the midst of a mental health crisis? So what about these narratives are not true? Why should we not be looking at these storylines to find out why this happened?
And mental health issues are not unique to the United States. And yes, we should do more to address them. But it's also an issue all over the world. But this is the only country where shootings like this one happen this often.
What is so glaring about the trans cult? Apparently your identity is the only thing that matters until you do something awful. His killing resulted from that ideology. And if you don't believe that, you're one dumb ass.
Listening to that, there really isn't any sense of clarity or common ground. Instead, it's just passionate feelings and noise, without cohesion or understanding. In times of tragedy, people usually come together after a tornado or natural disaster or an act of war. But that's not the case after school shootings. We want to point blame. The divisive rhetoric from partisan left and right-leaning media mirrors the same political divide Americans feel over the issue. Both sides are quick to identify what they think is the root of the problem, and both are demanding action. They just don't agree on what action is needed. And the truth is, neither do most Americans. The polarization over more strict gun laws is seeing an even deeper divide in recent years. In 2003, 70% of Democrats said gun laws should be stricter, according to a Gallup poll, and 41% of Republicans agreed. In 2023, a year after the Uvalde school shooting, and Americans are even further apart on the issue. 84% of Democrats and 31% of Republicans want stricter gun laws. What was once a 29% gap is now a 53% gap apart, making the issue more polarized today than in decades. Gallup did not include in its survey questions over mental health issues, or I would have included those too. But an Economist YouGov poll taken a month after the Uvalde school shooting also shows the deep divide. The poll found 51% of Americans agreed with the statement, school shootings are a mental health problem, not a guns problem. 41% disagreed with that statement, and 9% were unsure. The survey also found 41% of Americans believed stricter gun laws would have prevented the Uvalde school shooting, while 40% said they wouldn't have. 18% were unsure. All of these numbers are extremely close together, again showing a picture of a divided nation with a solution unclear. This isn't an easy story, especially when strong emotions are triggered in stories like these of real tragedies. We're all human, even journalists. And when we feel strongly about a social or political issue, it can be hard to stay impartial, but that is our job. My grandpa was my biggest fan and my biggest critic. He always told me if he watches one of my stories and can tell how I feel about it, then I did it wrong. And he was right. When news outlets frame facts to fit a narrative and leave out or bury certain facts that don't fit their perspective, trying to lead an audience to a conclusion, that's bias. And what comes from that bias isn't answers or clarity, but more division and polarization of a nation. And that's exactly what we saw here. And that's your bias breakdown. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end here. This is a lot of your time that you're willing to give us, and I really appreciate that. We're here to tell you the story a little bit differently, pinpointing the narratives in other media storytelling to hopefully leave you with a more well-rounded understanding of major stories. To be the first to get notified of new episodes dropping, all you have to do is download our Straight Arrow News mobile app and then sign up for notifications for Bias Breakdown. And remember, if you listen to Spotify or Apple Podcast, we are also on those platforms as well. There you can rate us and leave us reviews. We also love to hear from you on YouTube, so like or comment or engage with us on that platform as well. Keep the feedback coming. A big shout out, as always, to our talented team behind the scenes, Ian Kennedy and Allie Caldwell on our video editing and graphics. Our podcast would be a lot more boring without y'all. And thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.